Ready? Hi, welcome to a new episode of Points on the Circle, the opportunity for Hakafah members to get to know other Hakafah members. As you all know, when I talk to other people and talk about Hakafah, I tell everyone how much I love all of you at Hakafah. The truth is that I do love all of you. I love some of you more than others, in particular 4 people. So today's episode, I get to spend time with 3 of them and share them with you. I'm going to be interviewing my sons. So, Josh and Noah and Eli, welcome to Points on the Circle.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
First question I got to ask you, because I know it's the question that you get from everybody, and it's this. I guarantee you everybody asked you at one point, what's it like growing up the son of the administrator of Hakafah?
You know, it's a lot of pressure. A lot of people look to my mom, and to have that pressure on my shoulders, it's a lot of attention, you know.
Josh or Eli, you want to add anything?
Well, if I could say that if I had a dime for every time somebody's asked me this question, you know, I wouldn't have to be answering this question anymore. No, it's good.
Good.
You know, it gives us an inside view of the congregation and allows us to know what's going on, gives us a sense of, you know, even when we're away at college or, you know, Nashville or whatever, we can have a sense of what's going on with the congregation as a whole.
Oh, you took that way too seriously, but nice answer.
Well, you know, I gave a joke answer.
No, I know, not bad.
I don't know. I haven't heard the
So listen,
podcast yet.
you know, we were talking with Bibi, because as you know, Bibi's 3 kids and the 3 of you are the same age, and our experience at Hakafah, your mother's and mine, is really the experience of watching you all grow up at Hakafah, and the congregation also seeing that as well. Talk about the history of you guys, looking at the arc of you being part of Hakafah. What has been your most memorable experience at Hakafah, growing up there?
Well, there was a time when, before I was old enough to go and take classes at Hebrew school, we had like the babysitting program. And I remember once I fell off the monkey bars and I thought I broke my arm. That's pretty memorable.
That is pretty memorable.
I love
Profound.
I love how that's your memory of Hakafah as a whole.
Well, I mean, you brought up the pets, and I think that a big part of it was growing up going to Hebrew school and our families going out to dinner after Hebrew school every week. It really did make it like a family, like Hakafah thing, like family outside of our family type of thing. So like it was a lot of fun. And no, my memory was not focused on, you know, personal injury or anything, but that's how Hakafah was for me growing up.
And you know how we jumped from place to place to have dinner on Tuesday nights with the Pats? You know why that was? Because there was only so long that we can stay at one place before they kicked us out because of how loud you guys were wherever we went. Boris's Cafe in particular. Boris's Cafe. You know they closed in Auburn Woods. You now know why they closed.
Yeah, but Boris says we were always the only people in there.
Well, there was a reason for that.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. So like, why does it matter if we're loud? Because, you know, we're just entertaining the kitchen staff.
Yeah. Go on, Josh. What about you?
Well, I'm always going to remember from Hebrew school, in the blue Hebrew school prayer books, everybody's favorite reading, 9A letter F, which is the story of everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact phrasing of this little passage that everybody loved reading every Tuesday service when they got to pick which passage to read. But I will remember, you know, it was something that sort of was unique to Hakafah. My junior and senior year in high school, our band director posted, or maybe it was his son who was one of the band presidents at the time, posted inspirational quotes all around the band room, and those were up for about 2 or 3 years. And I remember going to my band locker, and I was next to some other Hakafah members who were at the Highland Park High School band, like Matt Kaufman, Michael Schomburg, Daniel Whitworth. And on that board was 9A letter F, the same passage for 9A letter F. And all of us who saw it knew it was 9A letter F, and it's sort of just like one of those little things that makes Hakafah special and keeps people in the congregation somewhat united.
A good example of when separation of church and state shouldn't be. So that's great. Thank you.
It's not a particularly religious passage, and I wouldn't say it's inspirational either, but there's something very profound about having 4 children named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. I feel bad for nobody.
So I feel sad for everybody. So there is an element of, and I know being the son of the administrator of the congregation, of expectation of your Jewish lives and what they were going to become and what people expected of you and continue to expect of you. Part of that, I'm sure, is real, and part of it is your perception looking back. But what's been interesting for your mother and me is watching you grow up in your own each unique Jewish kind of ways. And as you know, this whole podcast isn't going to be about you being Jewish, but you're my kids, so I think it's instructive for the conversation for the congregation. All right, so Noah, everyone loves when I tell them you're going to be a tattoo artist. Thank you, I know what I mean, but full time. And they're intrigued by that, and the first thing they say to me is, well, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, Noah has to be Noah. So I would love to have, talk to us about you becoming a tattoo artist and how that came to be. And in particular, tell us about your first tattoo and why you got it.
All right, well, so
How many
first
do you have
tattoo here, it's 11. First tattoo.
11?
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't know that.
It says Am Yisrael Chai, and I got that in London.
What does that mean?
I stand with Israel, essentially. It's a loose translation, but I got that.
The people of Israel lives.
Yeah, I mean, I got that because before I knew I was into tattoos, this was something that I felt was very personal, and something that I felt permanently would reflect my opinions for, foreseeable future. And so it was something that was very meaningful to me and my connection to Israel, my Zionist identity. So I got that, and during that experience, the conversation I had with the artist and the atmosphere in the shop, everything sort of rang very true and resonated with me. And a few months later, I actually was given the opportunity to get an apprenticeship, and since then, I've worked as an artist for 2 years now, and I do tattoos, on my own, not an apprentice anymore. And that whole journey has been a lot of fun because it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about. It's a career in art, something I've always wanted to do, and I think that there's a lot of profound things that I can do as a tattoo artist, even if it's on the micro level.
Great. Josh, chemistry. Knowing your mother and me, where did that come from?
That is a good question. I think it just sort of came from, whenever I would talk about what I'm doing in science class, you would always start saying, why, do feathers float, or why? And I think I just got tired of all of these open-ended questions and just needed to find the answer.
Now, admittedly, you have to explain that I would say that because when you were talking, I had no idea what you were talking about, and my head was in the
I thought
clouds.
that was implied.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Anyhow,
go ahead.
For those of you who don't know, that's what most of being a rabbi is. And so, no offense.
Go ahead.
I just, in high school, I had a really great AP chemistry teacher. I'm still in contact with her today. She's been something of a mentor for me throughout college and grad school so far. And, she's been a great influence and a great sounding board about the joys of doing teaching, over research, and sort of how that can be rewarding, and some of the challenges you might face in the secondary education community, in academia and stuff like that. And these guys can attest that I'm usually pretty bossy and sort of lecture when I helped them with homework, and maybe not so much of a helpful way at the time, but hopefully if it happened now it'd be more helpful. It's just sort of just one thing after another sort of pushed me in that direction.
So, following up on that, your life at Oberlin, which is interesting in and of itself, right? You did not spend a lot of time in the Jewish world there. you went to services. You went to Chabad every so often. I always love telling people that you went to the Jewish Muslim co-op. One of your
Kosher halal co-op.
one of your first couple of weeks in Oberlin, and wouldn't come back because they didn't use napkins. But
Yes.
but we know your mom and I were really surprised that when you went off to Vanderbilt for your PhD, that you started going to services. Talk about that. Why? Just briefly.
Yeah, so when I was at Oberlin, I did have some experiences with Chabad and with the Kosher Halal Co-op, which is affiliated with Hillel, but none of them really seemed to really, jive with how I, identified in terms of my own Jewish identity, and which was formed through Hakafah. And when I was at Vanderbilt, I had similar experiences with the Hillel there, and so just one night when I was, had nothing really else going on, I thought I'd maybe try going to a synagogue for services. And so I ended up going to West End Synagogue in Nashville, and that's actually the congregation where my mom's dad and my grandma went when they were in when my grandpa was at grad school at Vanderbilt. And so my mom and her brother actually were named there. And so I had a bit of a connection there, so I thought I'd try it out. And I just really liked the familial feeling that, exists in a congregation versus a student organization on a college campus.
Cool. So Eli, you're going off to Lawrence. God, that kills me. Not that you're going to Lawrence, but that you're going off.
Go Vikings.
As you know that. And why? Did you look at all at the Jewish makeup there? Was that an issue for you? What's life going to be like for you up there, do you think?
Well, so Lawrence University is in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is not a place where there are many Jews, and Lawrence is also a small school, so there's only like 80 Jews on campus. And so it's not necessarily concerning, but it's definitely going to be a new experience coming from like Highland Park where there are so many Jews. But I also know that I'm going to find my people and I'm going to find the Jews. So while there aren't a ton of Jews there, I know that I will be able to find people with similar backgrounds. Also people of different backgrounds, but it wasn't a huge concern coming in.
Why jazz?
Sounds good.
Is that a pun? That jazz sounds good, or it sounded like a good thing to go into?
Yes.
All right. So you want to say more about that?
So I started playing tenor saxophone. That's the instrument I play in 5th grade. And really the reason that I chose to play tenor sax is because Josh was the tenor sax in jazz gets all the solos. And so naturally, being a 5th grader, I was like, oh, I want to have all the solos. And so he showed me a few songs, a few jazz songs, and I really liked it. And just ever since then, I've had a few.
You're welcome.
I'm still trying to get the Elder Partridge family going with you on sax and Noah on bass and Josh on drums and Mom on piano and me on guitar. I think it'd be kind of cool. The Jewish Partridge family, you guys are so not into that.
We can all have pipe dreams.
We can all have pipe dreams. So talk about, y'all had three very different experiences when you went off on your own. What growing up on the North Shore and going to where you're going, talk about the impact, the two older ones and a little bit for you too as well. Eli, talk about the impact of growing up on the North Shore in your decision to go to college where you went and how you live your life now.
Well, I can start by saying a large part of my decision when it came to the college decision process was where can I find new people. I really didn't like the North Shore very much. I still don't.
No offense, folks. He likes all of you.
It's really just the shelteredness here and how we keep our ideas in a bubble here, and I think that there's a lot more diversity out there, but I think that was what impacted my college decision the most, was looking for a diverse place, somewhere with enough people to have such a diverse population. And I think that during this quarantine, it's been an interesting compare and contrast, being back in the North Shore and just seeing how sheltered it can be. So I think that played a big part of my decision.
Where'd you go?
Michigan State University
Go
in
Bucks.
East Lansing.
Okay.
Go Green.
Go on, Josh. What about you?
Well, if I'm being honest, I don't really think the North Shore really played a role at all in my college decision process. I knew I wanted to do science and music, and I knew I wanted some sort of, small, slightly more personal environment than, say, a major university like Michigan State. Go Green. Go Bucks.
Thank you.
Go Yo.
Yeah, go Yo. And so, I talked with my college counselor, and so I guess, she's part of the North Shore School District, so maybe that's how, but the college counselor said, you should look at Oberlin College and liberal arts schools, because that's where you're going to be able to find all of these things, and, and then I toured, and I liked Oberlin the best, and so I guess it just it only really played a role in just making me who I am to the point where I would choose a school like Oberlin.
Growing up on the North Shore, go for it.
I mean, I think I had a very similar experience to Josh. A lot of the schools I looked at were based on the schools that Josh and Noah had previously looked at. And so, in addition to what my college counselor had recommended, Josh also looked at Lawrence, and so my parents were like, Eli, you should look at Lawrence. So we looked at Lawrence. And
but for the record, you wouldn't look at Oberlin, not because Josh went there, but because you didn't like the idea. I thought it was because you didn't like the idea of a place that didn't use napkins either.
Oh, no, it wasn't that.
I also like to point out that when I was touring colleges, Eli told me that I should go to Oberlin because he wants to go to Oberlin one day and wants the Elder name recognizable so he has a better chance of getting in.
All right, go ahead.
I decided I didn't want to go to Oberlin.
Yeah, so...
Anyhow, this isn't to debate colleges. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't really think the North Shore and growing up in the North Shore really played a huge impact, besides the fact that my brother visited Lawrence and he lived in the North Shore.
Okay. So, as you guys know, I am a big fan of Millennials.
Really?
And I admit that. I am. Despite the criticisms thereof, and I think there are many legitimate criticisms that I can criticize you all on, Millennium being later. What do you think is, you're a millennial, Josh?
Borderline, yeah.
What are you? You're in between what, that and Gen Z, and what are you considered?
Full-fledged Gen Z.
Gen Z. So what do you, in your eyes, what do you think is a legitimate criticism of your generation? One thing that you would criticize most of people in your generation, and one thing that you think is the most exciting about the people your age for the future of our country and beyond?
Well, I think that a major criticism and something that I find very frustrating with people my age and younger is just the inability to connect on an interpersonal level in person, have experiences and take them in without the cell phone in the hand all the time. It's something that I work towards. It's something to not do. And just I think that we need to reconnect with nature and have that be more part of our day-to-day. This is something that I would criticize my generation with. Something that's positive, though, is while there is a lot of, debates going on in politics and everything, but I think we're on the right side of history in the fact that we're making a push on the progressive side of things instead of regressive and oppressive. So I think that's something important, and it's coming from this generation, the strongest push. So that's something that makes me proud to be my age, but at the same time, I really would think we need to work on interpersonal connection.
What about you, Eli?
On a similar note, we started getting, for me, we got a Chromebook when we were in 6th grade, which was at the time was really young, but now they're getting them in 1st grade. But so we grow up with computers, you learn the alphabet and addition really early on ABC Mouse or whatever the websites are called. So we grow up with technology. So learning how to interact and meet people and social skills, it's becoming a completely different world just because of how integrated technology is in our lives.
What about a positive?
On also similar to what Noah said, we're very dynamic when we want something. We don't stop until we get it.
That is true. As everyone with parents. So
while parents might find that annoying at times, it's also when there's something in the world that we want to change, it's hard to stop us.
Josh?
Yeah, I think I liked what Noah said. Like he said, he's sort of on the border. I don't really know where the exact age group is, but I guess I'm also technically on the border of Millennial and Gen Z. I think that it's definitely a more progressive generation than previous ones, because a lot of people in college and around our age are seeing everything going on in the world, and a lot of them are thinking, this is what you're going to leave us with, that's not acceptable. And so part of it is just what Eli was saying, like we want something and we're going to get it done, but I think that we have the power to get it done. But to speak more towards one of the weaknesses, it's also sort of in that vein. I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people, and people in our generation are becoming much more aware of mental health issues like anxiety and depression and stress.
Yeah.
Because it can be very overwhelming just seeing all of the going on in the world.
Keep it out.
Okay, definitely. Can't say that, but go ahead.
Okay. And they and so it can just be overwhelming, and you see a lot of other people
Rabbi's kid. Go
dealing
ahead.
with these sort of issues, and I think that again, the flip side of that though is that there was always used to be a stigma with
True.
seeing a therapist, and that's starting to be dissolved now. And so I think that millennials, maybe not so much Gen Zs, but millennials get a really bad rap that might not be as deserved as other generations say.
So you lead into another question, a follow-up to that, which is so I got two more questions for you guys. One is straight up, Josh, an indictment of your generation, of your parents' generation. What's something that you want to criticize us for, and be short, because we don't have a lot of time left. Something you criticize what we have left you or what we've done, or something also positive that we brought to you.
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's the world. There's all these issues with the world. You could talk about the environment, politics, human rights, and that's a whole other podcast episode right there. But I think that something that isn't necessarily acknowledged by a lot of millennials who are fighting the progressive fight is that these are values that are in beliefs that are being brought down from parents, or experiences that maybe to go against what your parents have taught you because you realize it's wrong. And so I think that the generation before us has given us a lens to sort of given us the experiences that we have needed to form these progressive beliefs and do something about it.
Great. Either of you?
I think that one thing that would be a negative would definitely be just, I think that there was a coddling of our generation that has led to maybe this millennials and Gen Zs having this sense of entitlement of wanting things done when we want it done. So I think that our generation was overall coddled by the generation before us. Thank you.
I'll remember the next time we ask you to take the dishes, put the dishes away, and
no,
you
exactly,
respond. Okay.
Exactly. And
you all heard that. All right, go ahead.
And I think a positive thing was that there was more of a push for the family unit, like to be more important, to have connectivity in the home. So I think that was something that was good for your generation.
And I mean, we're always told stuff like, it's up to you guys to make the change you want to see or whatever. But like, you guys aren't dead yet. Like, I mean, something along that line of like, it's not just up to us, even though y'all aren't, your generation and past generations aren't, young anymore.
Wow, this is great.
It doesn't mean
Listeners,
that it's
Welcome
just-
to my life. Welcome to my life.
Doesn't mean that it's just up to us, which is what is kind of implied when it's like it's up to you guys to make these changes.
Okay, last major question before we wrap this up, and that is project out 10, 15, 20 years. It's up to you. What's the Judaism of your generation in America for you going to look like?
Well, the reality of this country right now is, whatever happens in November, we might not want to be here, but I've always had this idea that eventually I'd end up in Israel, when it's safe or without military service. And that, I don't practice a Jewish life. I don't keep kosher. I don't really have any enjoyment out of services. I take a lot of pride in being Jewish. I take a lot of pride in Israel, and I love being Jewish, and I just want to keep that going. I want to start another generation of young Zionist Jews.
All right. Which one do you want us to go? Beautiful. Go on, Josh. Give us quickly. What is Judaism going to look like?
I think that that again could be a whole other podcast episode, but I think that it's becoming less of a traditional religious experience and much more cultural and historical experience. And so, when you have things like the Holocaust that happened, there's and that combined with our generation's progressive attitude, you have a Judaism where it's not so much focused on keeping kosher or going to services, which, and don't get me wrong, some people are still going to do all those things, but I think the focus is going to change less from the religious to the cultural and, bonding over, these shared experiences of the past.
Go on.
I don't really have anything else to add to that.
What do you think it's going to be for you?
I mean, it's so hard to say with the world we live in. Who would have thought at the beginning of last year that this is where we would be now? So I don't think we can really say in 10 to 15 years how Judaism will be for us.
We'll be robots by then.
So final quick question. Given the fact that none of you listens to your mother and your father about living in Chicago in the future, and we know that you're all going to be going somewhere else, when your mother and I decide to travel from house to house, which one of you wants us first?
I mean, I'll take it.
You pointed out.
No, I mean, you guys are great. Just as long as it's,
Yeah, take mom.
give us
Dear old dad can come on. All right.
just give us 3 days notice.
3 days?
Give or take.
You got it.
I need 3 years.
All right. Well, thank the three of you. It's a big deal. I know it's hard for you because you've been in the spotlight because of your mother's position at the congregation since you were born and came into this place. But thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast and sharing a little bit of yourself and our relationship. And that closes it for Points on the Circle for today. Lehitrot. See you soon.